Hello, I'm Jake Woodrow, civic journalist at Tellel Community Television. This week on The Record, Richmond Municipal Council held its regular monthly meeting in Arichat on October 28th. After the meeting, Warden Lois Landry, Deputy Warden Amanda Mombourquette, and District 5 Councillor Brent Sampson answered questions from the media. Near the start of the meeting, Council voted to make District 4 Councillor Amanda Mombourquette the new Deputy Warden.
The next item on the agenda, number 8, is election of a deputy warden. For those who may not be aware, Richmond County Council selects its warden following each election for 2 years at a time. Council holds deputy warden elections each year. So there is a policy around such on page 4 of your package for anybody who's following along. So I'm now going to call for nominations for the position of deputy warden.
I'll nominate Councillor Amanda Mombourquette for the position of deputy warden.
Maybe you'll ask you why I decided not to reoffer as deputy warden.
I don't think there was any one specific reason. I've got full faith that a new deputy warden, Amanda Mombourquette, can do a great job at it. And I hadn't thought too much on reoffering. I thought I appreciated the opportunity to be able to do it the last year, and hopefully maybe again in the future. But this just seemed like the right move right now.
Councillor Mombourquette, do you accept?
I do. Do you need a seconder on that? Or?
I don't believe so.
Fabulous.
Don't believe we do.
Not for nominations.
Not for nominations, right. So I'm supposed to say, are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations? And are there any further nominations?
I was going to nominate Councillor Brent Sampson, but since he nominated somebody else. Are you willing to?
I'll pass for this year.
I'm sure he's grateful, and so it's good to have such a wide repertoire of folks who are very capable and able.
What's your reaction to Amanda Mombourquette, the District 4 Councillor, being elected Deputy Warden tonight?
Oh, I think it's great. I think that we have a lot of, we've got a lot of capacity around the council table, and it's great to have somebody with that kind of experience. It was great to see different folks nominate people who nominated other people. I think that's a function, and it demonstrates how well this council is moving. So it's been a year. And we were sworn in on Halloween last year, and so we're a full year in. And what you're seeing around the council table is people who have good discussion and good debate about topics. We don't always agree. Our votes are not always unanimous, but they're always cordial. They're always well informed, and I think it's a sign that things are going very well.
Your thoughts on the work of Brent Sampson, District 5 Councillor, as the previous Deputy Warden?
Yeah, no. Brent is great, and he has really advanced some really important files. And I think his lead, not just here around this table, but the uptake and the conversations that are being had around involuntary destruction of homes and capped assessments, that won't end here. And we saw in the last sitting of the legislature, Ian Rankin talking about, the deputy warden in Richmond has this to say and has this concern. And so I'm really optimistic that Brent will continue to work on that file and help us, lead us through that conversation as we continue to advocate for such. Hearing no additional nominations following 3 repetitions of the question, I declare that, I would ask that nominations cease. I do need a motion and a seconder for nominations to cease. Moved by Councillor Mombourquette Marchand that nominations cease. Can I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sampson that nomination cease. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion carries. Congratulations, Deputy Warden Mombourquette.
Amanda, I guess first off, your reaction to being named Deputy Warden
for a term by your fellow councillors.
Yeah, no, I was more than happy to accept the torch from, Councillor Sampson. He spent the last year and doing that work. So, I think last council we had, we spread that work around as well. I think it's helpful to do that. It gives everybody a shot at providing that next level of support to the warden. So, yeah, I'm happy to undertake it.
During the report of the Committee of the Whole, Council reviewed a summary of amendments to the Municipal Government Act. Later in the meeting, Council discussed a memo from Property Valuation Services Corporation about property assessment under the Municipal Modernization Act.
The committee discussed the letter from the Honourable John Lohr, Minister of Municipal Affairs, regarding the summary of amendments to the Municipal Government Act. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and refer the MGA amendment, tax reductions due to natural disasters, to the Bylaw and Policy Committee for further discussion.
Moved by the Deputy Warden, seconded by Councillor Marchand. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favour signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and refer the MGA amendment allowing tax sale payments to be made electronically to the Bylaw Policy Committee for further discussion.
Moved by the Deputy Warden, seconded by Councillor Marchand. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favour signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Yes, would say yes and no. Yes, we are happy, or I myself anyway, just speaking on my own behalf, I'm happy that there's been some movement on that. It's not to the full extent of what we would have liked to have seen. Right now, the way it stands, and we're going to get more into this in bylaw policy as we sort of dig deeper into what the implications of this are, but it appears that there would be some avenues for municipalities to maybe reduce the tax burden after a wildfire or flood or some kind of natural disaster, something of that sort. However, if you ended up with a situation where maybe a single home was destroyed just by a fire unconnected to any kind of wildfire or anything like that, unfortunately, it wouldn't fall under this. So that, it wouldn't be applicable in those situations. So those people would kind of be left out of that. So, no, it probably doesn't go as far as we would have liked to have seen, or I would have liked to have seen. But yes, I think it is a step in the right direction. And, I appreciate the provincial government looking at that and making these amendments, and glad to see some movement on it.
You plan on not providing some feedback on your concerns about those changes that are?
Yeah, I think we want to, we're glad to see there's been motion, but, hopefully in the future we can address this again to see if it can be improved upon. I mean, like a lot of policies and changes that come into place, sometimes not everything goes the way you would have envisioned or liked to have seen. Doesn't mean that it's not maybe possible in the future, and it, we can discuss it further as time goes on.
So for your information, there is a memo on the Property Valuation Services Corporate from the PVSC regarding property assessments and the Municipal Modernization Act, which reiterates what we heard at Committee of the Whole. That's on pages 40 to 43. We already have a referral of that topic to the Bylaw and Policy Committee.
Now, the letter from Property Valuation Services Corporation, what was that about?
That was about property valuation, saying it's not us. So what the province has said is, what we had hoped was that when there is an involuntary destruction, so yes, wildfires, but also your home burns down, that property valuation would be told to put the cap back on that house as if the new house built on that same footprint is treated in the same way the old house was. That is an easy fix. It's something that is easy for the administration of that is very, very slight. It's not a particularly difficult thing. What they have said is they're just clarifying for municipalities, fair enough, that in Tantallon they are doing exactly that, but that they are not permitted to do it by virtue of legislation in any other place for events that happened at any other time. So there are opportunities for municipalities to be involved in supporting residents when there has been a home or a structure lost as a result of a natural disaster. Fires, your home burned down because of an electrical fire or something like that, that doesn't seem to be covered. And so that's what we'll continue to advocate for. But it was really PVSC saying, it's not us, go talk to somebody else. We're not permitted to do anything other than this.
Also during the report of the Committee of the Whole, Council approved its priority list of J-class roads to be submitted to the provincial government under the cost-shared paving program.
Committee discussed the application to the province for cost-shared paving for the 2026-2027 fiscal year. Supplementary information attached. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and add Tunar Lane to the list.
Second that.
Moved by Deputy Warden Mombourquette, seconded by Councillor Arichat. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried.
I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and submit an application to the province for cost-shared paving of the following J-class roads in order of priority: Kings Road, Rockdale; Tunar Lane, River Bourgeois; Forgeron Road, West Arichat; Sampson Road, Lordoise; and Lobster Plant Road, Cape Boguet.
Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so moved and seconded by Councillor Brent Sampson. Any discussion on that?
I'd like to make is that the list be Kings Road first, Bergeron Road second, Sampson Road third, Tunar Lane fourth, and Lobster Plant Road fifth, based on the information that we received with the numbers of residents on the roads.
Yeah,
So we have a motion.
oh yeah, okay, so I won't.
For that motion. Okay, so that motion does not move forward without the seconder. So is there anything you want, anybody?
I would like some discussion on it.
Sure, yeah, so no other amendments, I'm just saying at this point, yep.
No amendments, just
So that amendment did not move forward, so we're now still, we have the one as follows, and happy to have discussion on the amendment, or the motion that you see in the, in your package. Go ahead, Deputy Warden.
Okay, it does specifically mention paving, but I think we had talked about the double chip seal. So I would just, like whereas Tunar Lane is a dirt road now off of a small section of dirt road, I guess I would just add that to the discussion. Or the question that we posed to the province. It looks on the form like double chip seal is an option for this program, but I honestly, it's really difficult to tell, so.
I feel like that wasn't previous.
I know, it's taking me off guard a little bit. Yeah.
It appears that it is.
Yeah, but it can reduce costs based on my research by sometimes as much as 40%, so, and it would be a lower traffic like some of the others. So anyway, that would be my only, I guess, comment in the intention of the motion, that it would be to see,
In a cost-effective way.
Yeah, in a cost-effective way, exactly.
But just in reference to this, what I was thinking of earlier when you were speaking about that, I'm fairly sure the numbers seemed a little bit higher than they should have been on Sampson Road. Because I think that one had 5. I'm pretty sure it's still just 3 at the moment, I think. Because there's an empty dwelling that may still be there, but yeah, that one I think may have been recorded a little higher than it should have been, just for reference. Yeah.
Whether it could be chip sealed?
Chip sealed or paved.
Got that direction. I know there was conversation, but I don't know if I did. And if I received it, I can tell you that I did not, though. But I'm more than happy to explore that when we fill out the form with your guys' priorities, that, if chip seal is an option, by all means.
So is there any other discussion on the motion that we see? And I'll read it again. So the council accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and submit an application to the province for cost-sharing paving of the following J-class roads in order of priority: Kings Road, Tunar Lane, Forgeron Road, Sampson Road, and then Lobster Plant Road. So that's the motion. Do we have any?
Yeah, thank you, Ward. Yeah, I know that there was discussion on this last week or last meeting during my absence, and I've had many discussions about Lobster Plant Road, and people are aware that it is a long-term goal, but it's a costly one as well. So people are aware of that situation, and we're okay. I'm okay with the priority and the list the way it is. Yeah. Thank you.
I actually drove both of them just this week, and Forgeron Road is actually not in terrible shape. And although there are a number of roads there, it's fairly short for the number of houses, and there are certainly to the north and south of that road are roads that are in much worse condition. So Port Royal Road, Anthony Road, certainly much more in need than these. They're just not J-class roads. So I'm satisfied with this list.
Yeah, so am I, Warren, and having those discussions, I think that road is graded twice a year, and the only concern was that the base of the road, the gravel part of the road is kind of to its bare minimum. So they realize that, grading does help it twice a year, but it's also depleting the gravel, right? So they're looking at maybe, having a new base put in there or some kind of gravel. So that might be something to look forward to in the future, right? Thank you.
Madam Chair, through you to the councillors, well, we had a conversation with our Director of Public Works, and he's going to reach out to the province as well to see if we could possibly even break that road into two pieces to make it more palpable, cost-wise to us and the province. That maybe, it may take longer to get it done, but if we broke it into smaller pieces and smaller projects, at least it's on the radar. And when money's available and crews are mobilized to our area, we may be able to make use of it.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
The priority list that you guys approved for J-class roads, are you generally satisfied that you guys made the right decisions there as far as the final list?
Yes, so it came to, the deadline was sometime this week for us to submit that. And so it was on our agenda back in September, and then, just thought we'd like a little bit more information. And so Councillor Mombourquette was able to bring a road that had been on the list but not on the list, and really wanted to kind of thoroughly vet that. And then at the committee of the whole meeting, when we looked at those 5 roads, it was, okay, here is a tentative list, but ask the CAO to go and count the homes that would be impacted by these decisions. And each of us drove all over. Councillor Sampson wasn't able to be at the committee of the whole meeting, but we reached out to him. He was able, great thing, right? He was able to watch the meeting. But we agreed that we would, open it up for an amendment. He actually spoke to residents, and we're going to do some work. The problem with the Lobster Plant Road is it's very, very long, and it makes it difficult for us to come up with our 50% of that road work. But looking to see if in subsequent years, could we submit one part of it one year and another part the next year to make it more palatable for us during the budget process. So yeah, I think I'm very satisfied with how that played out.
Did you also have to weigh in terms of Lobster Plant Road, the number of homes along the stretch compared to the fact that it's a road leading to a major business serving Richmond County? How difficult a discussion was that? It was difficult for sure. What we're left with though is the condition of the road during a bad weather event, and what happens, like, can grading actually make a difference on that road? And it has been graded consistently because it is a business. And so when we look at what happens during significant weather events or heavy rains, other roads wash out. These roads don't necessarily. So there are a multitude of factors that go into that. But I'm very satisfied that we considered all the factors that really should be considered.
In the report from the Planning Advisory/Heritage Committee, Council reviewed permitting practices for standalone buildings, as well as the Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation's housing catalog.
Planning Advisory and Heritage Committee, Councillor Brent Sampson chairs that committee, so we'll ask him to deliver that report.
Planning Advisory Heritage Committee report, October 2025. The committee met on October 4th, 2025. the committee discussed the review of permitting practices for standalone buildings. I move that council accept the recommendation of the Planning Advisory Heritage Committee and direct staff to prepare a report on how to provide more consistency and less ambiguity for accessory buildings across the county.
Motion on the floor, seconded by Councillor Marchand. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor with an aye? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried.
The committee discussed the review of the CMHC housing catalog. I move that council accept the recommendation of the Planning Advisory Heritage Committee and direct staff to prepare a report outlining the process, scope, timeline, and resources required to overhaul and consolidate Richmond County's land use bylaws with the goal of improving consistency, reducing ambiguity, and removing barriers to diverse and affordable housing development.
Moved by Councillor Brent Sampson, seconded by Councillor Mombourquette. Any discussion on that? Marchand, sorry. Any discussion on that? Unanimous. Okay, hearing none. I may vote hallelujah to this one and not aye, but we'll. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
I move that council accept the recommendation of the Planning Advisory Heritage Committee and direct staff to update the zoning areas for Evanston, Isle Madame, and St. Peters to allow a minimum of 4 units as of right.
So moved by Councillor Brent Sampson, seconded by Deputy Warden Mombourquette. Any discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Are you happy with the movement on bylaws and zoning as far as helping to build housing stock in the municipality?
Yeah, I am. I think that this is a significant step. And to give folks a little bit of sort of an overview, I remember being in, I think, grade 7 when my mother was a municipal councillor and they started bringing zoning in. And I remember my friends being mad about, I can't believe they're going to be doing this. Some of our zoning goes back to the 1980s. And so we have zoning on Isle Madame. We have zoning in St. Peters. We have a separate set of rules for Central Richmond. We have another set for West Richmond, and we have Plan Richmond, which isn't Richmond at all. It's Richmond minus Isle Madame, St. Peters, West Richmond, and Central Richmond. So in that, we asked EDPC, said, listen, here's these free housing plans that you can get. There's a set from CMHC and one from CBRM. Any places that might not be able to build these, because we don't want that. We particularly don't want for there to be any impediment to build 4 units, because what we know is government is trying to encourage development and density. So if you build 4 or more, you get to get your provincial and federal sales tax rebated. So you're talking about saving 14% on per unit if you build as many as 4. And the number of places where you couldn't build this and you couldn't build that, and you could build this if you had a development permit, you could build this one if you had a development agreement, you could build this one in a month with an R in it. It was just all over the map, and it discourages builds, it discourages development, and we do not have the capacity to have anything in place that gets in the way of housing. So what we want to do is we want to support development, but we absolutely must get out of the way and not discourage development. So I'm really pleased to see the 2 things that happened tonight. One is that council is saying go forward when it comes to quads in the areas that have, that currently are not allowed to do that, especially where there's water and sewer, and that's practical for those places. And then also to say, yeah, separate, rather than just amend this over here and that over there and this there for where. We need to overhaul all of our zoning. So that's going to be a little bit of a larger undertaking, but we can do hard things, and that's the important step as we get out of the way for development.
The comfort centers and emergency shelter strategy was discussed during the report of the Municipal Emergency Management Advisory Committee.
Next up is the Municipal Emergency Management Advisory Committee. This committee is chaired by our Deputy Warden, so I will ask her to deliver this report.
Municipal Emergency Management Advisory Committee report for October 2025. The committee met on October 1st, 2025. The committee discussed the Comfort Centre's emergency shelter strategy. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Municipal Emergency Management Advisory Committee and direct staff to investigate ways to improve and expand comfort centres and emergency shelters across the county in preparation for budget deliberations.
Moved by the Deputy Warden, seconded by Councillor Marchand. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Now, you mentioned that there's going to have to be some improvements of facilities in order to be classified as comfort centers or emergency shelters. What would some of those upgrades or changes entail?
Right. So the intent of that discussion was really, in looking at the location of our comfort centers and emergency shelters, like that type of thing that we have now in the county. It's easy to see that geographically we have some gaps, that that in some places we have a higher concentration of many of those. So we're just really wanting to work with our emergency management coordinator to look at how do we fill those gaps? Are there incentives that we could provide to community groups, either financial or other types of resources, to help them, come online, to be part of the program? So it really, when we use the word expand and improve in that motion, it really wasn't about increasing the number. It was about expanding the level of service so that residents in Richmond County, regardless of where they live, have somewhat similar access to these types of services. We're seeing increasingly severe weather events. It's always top of mind for us now. How are we going to deal with these things when they occur? And so making sure that we try to increase levels of service for residents all over the county, I think, is an important step. So the answer to that question is, I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but we just want to be able to move that process forward with our emergency management coordinator.
Now, that wouldn't include expanding the size of the facilities necessarily, just what's in them currently now and improving it to become classified as such.
Right. Yeah. No, we're not talking about building new things and building pieces on things. What we're talking about is what are the steps we need to take to fill the gaps and to make it easier for community groups to participate. There are lists of criteria. What can we do, in advance of our budget deliberations to be able to support that, support communities in responding.
Now, I don't want to put you in the position of pointing blame at anybody because obviously it takes a lot of effort to set up a comfort center. But that being said, you mentioned gaps. Are there any one or two parts of the county that council is worried about in terms of being able to have a comfort center setting for the people?
Yeah, well, I think if you look at the eastern end of the county, there's some gaps there, right? But you need to think about it from the perspective of community organizations as well. How much responsibility are they undertaking? What is the cost of insurance liability? What would be the costs to changes in, either equipment, et cetera? Do they have the volunteers available to be able to open these? You really need to think about it from the community perspective. So that's why I think it's important for us to to talk about as a council and consult with our community groups to find out what is it they can need, how can we better support them. I have to say, the work we've done to date, in the last 5-6 years, we've come a long way in terms of being organized with our comfort centers in particular, and so. This is just another step in the process.
New Deputy Warden Amanda Mombourquette gave her take on municipal code of conduct changes from the provincial government.
So moving on to member of council items. Councillor items, Deputy Warden Mombourquette has something she would like to speak to on the code of conduct changes, as those of us around the table know. Deputy Warden Mombourquette is the Strait Area Representative on the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, and she's going to bring this topic to the table.
Regarding the code of conduct, I asked to add this item to the agenda because there has been a recent decision by the province of Nova Scotia to pause the complaints process for members of the public that was put in place through the new code of conduct for municipal elected official regulations. These came into effect last year. So it's been about a year since they originally came into effect. Following a CBC article that headlined, Nova Scotia removes the public's accountability or ability to file complaints about municipal politicians in the wake of the provincial decision to pause the complaints from members of the public. I certainly received some feedback and questions from constituents in Richmond County, but also all across the province, who were, I think, rightfully questioning how that decision to pause public complaints will make municipalities more accountable. Among the amendments to the regulations made earlier this month, and I won't go through them all, but two I wanted to highlight were that complaints may now be made by a council member related to the conduct of another elected official in the same municipality, not by a member of the public. Council members may not submit a complaint on behalf of another person or entity. So this really does hamstring the members of the public ability to be able to make complaints about the conduct of council. So with the amendments, because members of the public cannot lodge a complaint directly with an investigator, nor can they make a complaint to a councillor to pass along, councillors are really now the only ones who can make a complaint that would follow that particular investigative process outlined in the code and have the potential sanctions that are outlined in the code apply. Those changes don't apply to investigations that are already in progress. It's just for new ones going forward. And I think we were all left scratching our heads. I certainly was taken off guard because, after several years of work by the province, by the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, by the Association of Municipal Administrators, the Association of Villages, there was an entire working group established to develop, and we finally had a code in place that provided a legal basis for investigations and sanctions. Prior to the code being adopted last year, we had very little to work with, and we depended on a very informal process that differed from one municipality to the other, and that depended on all parties to cooperate and accept sanctions because we really had no legal authority to impose them. That was the advice that we had gotten in the past. To be clear, though, I think the issue that the province encountered with this was that as soon as the new code was opened, in some municipalities it resulted in the submission of what I would consider a wave of frivolous complaints against elected officials. Examples of those complaints from people were from people who simply disagreed with the way a councillor voted. So if you were against an issue or for an issue, a complaint would be submitted. That a person might issue many complaints, that they were encouraging others to issue complaints on the same matters, et cetera, et cetera. And so what was happening is, the way the code is currently written, every single complaint triggers a full investigative process by an external party, right? And often those are people, the external party are people with expertise in legal and HR. So as you can imagine, the costs began to mount. And it didn't take long for them to become burdensome to both the municipality and the taxpayers' dollars. So instead of achieving its intent to create accountability, it really became more of a cost burden on the municipality. And I think language tweaks are definitely needed to address these issues so that the intention of the code and its parameters are better understood and articulated. And I also want to make it clear that public complaints about municipal officials have not been disallowed in Nova Scotia. And I feel like some of the media coverage, some of the conversation I've seen have been about that. You can still make a complaint about a municipal councillor. The difference is that it will follow that informal process that we had in place before. It won't follow under the code until such time as the language is clarified to try to limit those frivolous complaints. And again, the legally binding investigative process and the potential sanctions wouldn't necessarily apply. You'd have to be more cooperative in how you approached it, that type of thing. So NSMFM did not go to the province with this. My understanding is that the province was getting complaints directly from municipalities because it was becoming an unmanageable cost and resource burden. So the reason I wanted to bring it forward tonight, Council, is because I understand the need for the pause so that, the province and maybe the old working group can get back together, to refine the language to enhance its clarity and reduce that administrative burden, protect against the misuse of it. But it does leave us back where we were before October 2024, which I think was widely recognized as not good enough. So, the situation is far from ideal with this pause. There are still avenues for members of the public to make their, complaints known to council or or to a CAO, should such a thing arise. But we would like to get back to that formalized process. And my feeling is it sort of erodes trust in the public when you have something in place, then you have to take it away. But I also kind of see that if refinement of the language is needed to make this manageable for municipalities, especially small municipalities like ours, where we, have small budgets and limited number of people to deal with them, I think that that's fair. So I guess what I'm asking of council this evening is, could we consider sending a letter to the new Municipal Affairs Minister that the provincial government act quickly in working with municipalities to better define eligible, or maybe more specifically ineligible types of complaints, and to reinstate the ability of the public to submit them as soon as possible and copy NSFM. I'm sure the province is getting pressure to do such a thing, but I think that we want to make sure that this becomes an advocacy priority of the NSFM. So I'm looking for that type of motion this evening. So.
Tonight, you brought forward some issues that had come up regarding the recent amendments to the Municipal Code of Conduct, and you bring the NSFM perspective to this as well, being the Strait Area representative. You mentioned that since the new complaint system came in just about a year ago, there has been a flood of complaints. I believe Pam Mood, the head of the NSFM, described it as like a Black Friday sale that everybody had an opportunity to take a shot at their least favorite councillor or municipal leader or what have you. Yeah. But that being said, your thoughts now that this system is gone, or at the very least paused, what are your main concerns about the way things have changed just in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, my main concern is the length of time of the pause. I'm really hopeful that the province and the either the previous working group or a new one can come to some resolutions on what does and does not constitute, a legitimate complaint. And I do think, when I was speaking to council this evening, I talked about what would be eligible to be considered a complaint. It might be easier to define what is not eligible, and just disagreeing with how a councillor votes on a motion does not, should not constitute, a basis for a complaint. I know there have been other complaints in the news that they certainly sound legitimate, but hopefully we can, as a group of municipalities, come to a point where there's enough definition provided to the public that they're not, wasting their time, wasting taxpayers' dollars. It does get to be an expensive proposition when you're having to hire those external resources to conduct the investigative process. But the reason that you need to appoint that type of investigator is to ensure an unbiased process. So there's got to be a happy medium there. My main concern is how long it takes us to get there. I feel strongly that the Code of Conduct was a huge positive step forward for municipalities in Nova Scotia, and want to see it strengthened. So I understand the need for the pause, but just hoping it's not too long.
Now, you mentioned a working group that was looking at this. Is that an NSFM working group, or is it in conjunction with the department? How does this work?
So back in 2022, I believe it was, there was a working group established to develop the code in the first place. That group included representatives from the province. It included reps from the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, the Association of Municipal Administrators of Nova Scotia, and the Association of Villages of Nova Scotia. And they worked very diligently for a period of a couple of years getting that code across the finish line, and they've done some really great work. But with anything new, there's going to need to be some tweaks, and I think we all have to have a little bit of patience to work out the kinks in the process and make sure that we do arrive at a balanced approach.
Quick question as a follow-up. I understand, of course, that the NSFM Fall Conference is coming up just next week in Halifax, and it seems like there are a few people that want to bring this to the floor. Are you hoping for a good discussion there to be able to advance this issue beyond where it is now?
Oh, I can promise you there will be discussion. Absolutely. As municipalities, when we come together like that, we don't get to do that very often. So when we do come together in that way, it gives us a great opportunity to work out these kinds of issues that affect all municipalities. And this is certainly one we can work on together.
So to move this forward, can I get you to make that motion, and then we can start with that?
The motion I will make is I will move that the council send a letter to Municipal Affairs Minister John MacDonald requesting that the provincial government act quickly in working with municipalities to better define eligible and or ineligible complaints, so that the ability of the public to submit complaints is reinstated, and to copy NSFM on that motion requesting that it become an advocacy priority for them.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded by Deputy Warden Mombourquette and seconded by Councillor Brent Sampson. I would like to say that the one thing I would I agree with everything you said, but I would suggest that we aren't back where we started because we did repeal and replace what we had in place. Right. So we actually we are acting in the absence of any policy. So there was at least something that this council said, in the future, here's how we'll handle things. And now we don't even have that because we had to repeal what was here in order to have this, carry the authority it needed to. So we're not even where we were. We're further behind. Councillor Marchand?
Deputy Warden, did you say that public can still put a complaint in, but it goes through another process?
That's correct. So essentially, the legal basis through the code of conduct that we were granted, that's not going to apply to complaints coming from members of the public. If someone complains to the warden about something that I've done in public, they are still welcome to make that complaint, but it will have to be handled internally. And understanding that, council may feel that they want to impose sanctions, investigate and impose sanctions, but we would be relying on my cooperation to accept that process in order to go ahead. So it's, again, like I said, they can make complaints, but it will be more of an informal process than what we saw formalized in the code. So I really hope we get back there quickly. And when I made the statement about we're back where we were before, I meant like more generally as a province. Some municipalities had no code at all, right? But in our case, you're right. Like we are even a little bit further behind. So
okay, great. There's a motion on the floor. Hearing no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
The code of conduct, municipal code of conduct, the complaint process, is essentially now the current system in Richmond is just basically an informal process because of the lack of anything that's been legislated?
Yeah, and so, there was a code of conduct sort of policy here, but it didn't allow for sanctions, but it did sort of outline how the process that Richmond would follow before the province came in and said, look, we're going to support this important work. And so when we adopted the provincial code of conduct, we repealed and replaced that. So we are essentially in a vacuum where at least there had been a little bit of structure. So I want to be clear. If I vote in a way that you don't want me to vote, if there's a matter before council and somebody doesn't like the way I vote, then don't vote for me the next time. That's how you handle people who behave ethically but don't do things you agree with. But there are people whose behavior does not meet the standard we need to see in all our elected officials. We need to make sure that there are safeguards against frivolous complaints. So if I vote yes to something you wanted me to vote no to, don't vote for me again. That's not something that the municipality should have to spend thousands of dollars hiring a lawyer to make sure that that is shown to be not something that you should be able to complain. Thousands of dollars. So there was sort of that glitch in the process that needed to be changed. And so I get it. We don't want to see residents' money, our taxpayers' money. We don't want to see municipal funds going out the door to lawyers for something that is frivolous. But we still have to have a process so that people who do things they shouldn't do understand that there's a consequence.
Does the amendment to the code of conduct that was approved by the province earlier put more pressure on the municipality to try to fill that void, to fill up the gap that resulted when, as you mentioned, the county policy was repealed this time last year to make way for the municipal code of conduct? Is it up to you folks? Is it up to the province? Who is it up to?
So there's essentially two paths we can take. One is we come up with something in-house that is a policy that says this will happen and then this will happen and then this will happen. And it's a structure and people know what they can expect. At the bottom of this process, though, is really not anything that allows us to impose consequence unless the person agrees, which is really not, that's like saying, go stand in the corner if you're okay with that. Like, there has to be some teeth to consequences and there has to be an authority to enforce that. The other alternative is that the province does what it needs to do to make the small changes And one change they made, so for example, let's suppose somebody does something that they shouldn't do, and it is a public thing that is done. If 25 people complain about that thing, you shouldn't have to 25 investigations. You shouldn't have to pay 25 lawyers to each investigate the same thing. So that was a change they made. Multiple complaints about the same thing are handled as one complaint. And so that was a small change that would be really, really impactful and can solve a lot of problems in the process. We need to see more of those changes that say, okay, here's a concern that's been flagged to us by municipalities. What are the changes we need to make so that we can still have a policy and a code of conduct that allows residents to feel like they have a place where they can complain about somebody's ethical conduct, not how somebody votes. Don't vote for them again, but misconduct. How do we give residents the opportunity to do that in a way that allows for the authority of council to impose consequences?
Finally, during the review of action items, Warden Lois Landry reported productive meetings with Invest Nova Scotia.
Review of action items are pages 45 to 54 of your package. If anybody has any questions, I do want to provide a bit of an update on number 453, exploration of a joint management and planning committee, where there was an update that we would say, and P.S., what about including the invest lands in the net zero study? So the net zero study, that ship has sailed. Pardon the pun, but we have had some good conversations with the Deputy Minister of Growth and Development, who is also the Deputy Minister of the New Housing, but in his role as Deputy Minister of Growth and Development. He is also the CEO, of Invest Nova Scotia. So we have had some meetings with him, and we framed something we would like to start, some conversations we would like to start. And so the CAO kind of drafted a letter talking about the potential framework for that, which would be monthly meetings, just virtual, to kind of start some conversations about what's possible, what ways can we collaborate more on that. And they are, and perhaps moving to bi-monthly down the road, but they are open to doing that. And so we expect to start those conversations soon. So movement forward, at least on that file a little bit. So we'll keep you posted, and as soon as we get something underway, we'll bring that to council in a warden's item and give you a better sense of that.
Now, you mentioned that there was meetings with the CEO of Invest Nova Scotia, and you described them as they seem to be constructive. What was discussed there? And you talked about some collaboration. What's coming up there?
So this goes back, I believe, even to the last council, and it predates the conversations about the net zero study about the ports. So there is land that is owned by Invest Nova Scotia. Invest Nova Scotia is a branch of the provincial government. It's an organization that is owned by, run by the provincial government. And so they own land in our industrial park, and it's theirs. I absolutely agree. But we would like to have some conversations about who's the ideal person, who's the ideal company, what are you looking for, what does that property, what are the challenges with, are there easements? As we know, anybody who's got, a piece of land anywhere, we're always mindful of easements and agreements that you have and boundaries and all of that kind of stuff. So, having some conversation, because as you can imagine, we get people kicking the tires all the time. So, hey, if this happens, we'd be really interested in this. If offshore wind comes ashore, our company might like to do business in your area. What's for sale? Who's got what? So what are the ways that, acknowledging that they are the landowners, what are the ways that we can have conversations so that we are talking to them about the conversations we're having? They can talk to us about the conversations that they're having. And then we look to ways that we can sort of do the best that we can do for Richmond County. We want to see the most development, the development that makes sense. We don't want to put a mom and pop ice cream stand there if a multinational corporation wants to buy more of it. For, you know, there's of course yes and no and advantages and disadvantages to the sale of property, but we would like to sort of just have some conversations. So what our conversations to date have been about having conversations, and who should we be talking about. So it's not as formal as a joint management committee by any stretch of the imagination. Fine, doesn't matter what we call it, just being able to have conversations is a huge step forward. So we're really pleased and really grateful to the folks from Invest, and you know, who also wears two hats as the Deputy Minister for Growth and Development. So really pleased with those conversations and their willingness to kind of engage with us.
So this is less to do with the initial concern, which is about getting the Strait of Cancel Superport being involved in the Net Zero Atlantic Port Survey, which may be long gone by now, and basically determining who owns the land and who has the right to promote it.
Yeah, I mean, we know they own the land. I don't want to overstate our authority to be in the loop here. I don't want to overstate. This is property owned by Invest Nova Scotia, and they do have final say in who they work with and who they sell to. But what we know is that we are all working towards the same goal, which is to promote development in multiple sectors. But we're looking to see those pieces of property support growth in Richmond County, in the Strait area, and in the province as a whole. So if they're holding on to land for some purpose, is there something we could do, for example, to say, look, somebody who's got a different idea, there's other pieces up here that you don't own, can we connect them with landowners that own that? Are there any issues around easements, and can our staff help with that? Because as you can imagine, we are constantly trying to navigate some, you know, decisions made in the 1970s, and there's a pipe under here, and there's no legal agreement between those parties and whatever. So we're doing a lot of that work so that we are investment ready. Happy to engage with the folks that invest and to offer that support as well. So it's really just about saying we're all interested in the same end game here. So how can we sort of walk in lockstep so that we're not missing any opportunities?
Thank you for watching. Please tune in again to find out what we will be talking about on The Record.